Well, Europe has a message for Ukraine and Zelensky. You can F right off, basically. We're not going to send your young Ukrainian men that fled your war zone back home into the meat grinder. That's what Europe is basically saying today. Ukraine has, of course, run out of men to fight NATO's war, and they're calling on Europe to send the draft dodgers back home to fight. They're calling them draft dodgers, you know? Well, a number of European Union
We didn't call them draft dodgers last year. I mean, let's just think back to how...
we didn't call them that.
No, but think back how the mainstream media talked about these like cosmopolitan Europeans who had white skin too and were just fleeing their country, which was a normal European place, and that it was so kind of Westerners to open their doors to them. Like, they
were called refugees.
Yes, they were.
Now they're called draft dodgers.
Right. This is an amazing turn of nomenclature.
Yeah, it really is. Nomenclature, one of my favorite words. Also, so a number of European countries are saying, sorry, we're not going to do that. We're not going to send these men back to die. This comes on the heels of our big report last week here on Redacted, where we showed you how Poland is sending men back to Ukraine. Poland's all in on it. Poland's like, yeah, whatever you want to do, you know. Poland's great. Well, we'll send the men back to die. That's our thing. And other European countries are sending letters now to these refugees, aka draft dodgers, on behalf of Ukraine. Like, we'll do your bidding. Some of these countries are doing it. Like this man who received a letter to report for duty. This is a man, he's a Ukrainian. He's somewhere in Europe. We don't know exactly where. And I don't think it's one of the countries that we're about to highlight here in a moment. But here he is receiving a letter basically saying, you need to come back and go fight. Watch.
Друзья, короче, время нездоровых новостей. Я не знаю, что делать. Короче, пришло мне такое письмо.
He's saying, I just received this letter. It even has my photo on it. If you're listening to the podcast version of this, I'll translate it. And he says, I translated it. It says that Ukraine has sent a request.
Украина дала запрос. Украина дала запрос.
According to the Ukrainian authorities, I entered the territory, the European Union, illegally. And although I was traveling legally, I entered legally, he says. I didn't buy any certificates here. I don't know what that means. I told you how I left, meaning he told Ukraine how he was going to leave the country. And it says here I have to leave the European Union within 2 weeks and get back basically to the meat grinder. So he's receiving letters and others are receiving letters as well, but not so fast. So let's go through this new report from news agency ATV in Hungary, as well as German news agency, and as well as RT. All of these news agencies confirming this story, and they're summing it up here. So here's RT summing up. The Czech Republic announced on Wednesday that it would not send military-age men who arrived as refugees back to Ukraine to be conscripted. Germany, Austria, and Hungary have already made similar declarations. European conventions exclude extradition for charges such as desertion or draft evasion. That's what the Czech Republic says. So the Czech Republic is saying that's not a crime. They're deserting the draft. They want to get out of a war zone. That's not a crime in the eyes of the Czech Republic. However, he added that if Ukraine files individual extradition requests citing specific criminal acts they may have committed, then Prague might give them more consideration. So, you committed a crime and you need to go back to face justice in Ukraine because you committed some sort of crime? Okay, well then we'll consider it. But that's not even a foregone conclusion on the part of the Czech Republic. So get ready for that. I'm sure Ukraine's going to start sending letters out for these Ukrainians who are there, who fled and didn't want to fight. Ukraine will start sending these criminal requests for these men to be sent to Ukraine.
So here's a question. Do you think... how legitimate do you think that a criminal request has to be? Will they then take them to a court? Because you and I both know that a government can accuse somebody of something, but most, I guess, Western governments have to prove it in court. You know, unless you're Julian Assange,
right.
In which case you don't. But you can't just accuse somebody of something without having their day in court. So would someone like Poland say, okay, you told us this guy's a criminal and you want him back, but will you give him a fair trial? Can you...
Well, Poland doesn't give a rat's ass. Poland is happily already sending these men back. But in the case of the Czech Republic,
right.
The Czech Republic, I would presume, would have to then go through a court hearing on it. And a judge in the Czech Republic would have to review the criminal charges.
Yes.
And he would have
according to the United Nations Charter, they would have to be guaranteed a fair trial.
So I don't know exactly how the Czech law would work in that regard as it relates to that, but certainly you'd think that they don't just come to your door and just grab them and take them.
They can't just say, hey, that guy ran a red light in 2018, so we're taking him, right? They are owed a fair trial before they're extradited, even if there is a criminal charge.
Imagine the infrastructure. Just think about this for a second, right? That it would take for Ukraine to put in place like this whole process of going after each of these individual men. Like that's how desperate
it is.
That
also is remarkable, right? So, how can they do that?
And the financial burden falls on the country that they're asking them to leave.
Right. Yeah, because they're going to have to provide the escort. They're going to have to fly them there, drive them there, presumably fly them there. So that'll be on the taxpayers.
Court, if they take them to court, like all that, the lawyers litigation, and all that.
Yeah.
Right. And, unlike Julian Assange, who did not get to await his extradition trial as a free man, will they then be allowed to live their lives freely while facing or fighting extradition? Who can even afford to fight extradition? Will there be lawyers who will fight on their behalf? This is a big spiderweb and a mess.
So Hungary, the country of Hungary, has ruled out any extraditions outright. Viktor Orban, who of course just spoke with Tucker Carlson about a week or so ago, says, we are not investigating any Ukrainian refugees to determine if they have been called up for military service. Hungary will not extradite them to Ukraine. All refugees from Ukraine are safe in Hungary, Hungary says. Like, full stop. We're not going to, you can send us all the extradition letters you want. So maybe Hungary is the place to go. Like if you're out there and you're Ukrainian and you're trying to hide from these guys so you don't go back, to fight NATO's war, NATO and the United States. This is not about Ukraine. It's about NATO, of course. So if you want to be safe and away from these creeps, maybe Hungary's the place to go for you guys. Who knows?
I mean, at the very least, that's consistent with the messaging we heard when the special operation began last year, is that these places are welcoming to Ukrainian families. So there are 4 European nations who continue to say that.
So, of course, this is not a surprise coming from Hungary, right? Because in recent days, there have been credible reports that Ukraine and the United States are planning to blow up some more pipelines, specifically the Blue Stream pipeline and the Turk Stream pipelines. The Blue Stream pipeline brings gas to Hungary, and Viktor Orban responded to these reports and said that any attack on these pipelines would be considered an act of war on Hungary. So if you're thinking about blowing up our pipeline, you might want to think twice about that. Orban has, of course, for years been talking about increasing energy flows from Russia via the pipeline. So, the United States already blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Would they do this against, they already don't like, the United States already doesn't like Viktor Orban. They certainly don't like Hungary, and they would love to meddle in this way. So, of course, the needling back and forth right now between Orban, Ukraine, and NATO is fascinating to watch. Meanwhile, what about Germany? They've been sending these big tanks, plenty of tanks into Ukraine. They've been doing training exercises for Ukrainian soldiers in Germany. So Germany's been, up Ukraine's ass for a while now. Well, now Germany also saying, sorry, we're not going to do this. According to the news agency, Deutsche Welle is reporting that German officials who spoke to the state broadcaster did not intend to send any draft-eligible refugees back to Ukraine. So Germany's saying, F you, sorry, we're not doing this. Since they say desertion and draft evasion are not crimes under German law. Right now, there are over 123,000 Ukrainian men of military age in Germany. I'm going to go through some of the numbers here. It's actually kind of staggering in some of these other countries. So 123,000 Ukrainian men. Like that's a massive contingent of military age men in Germany. And Germany saying, sorry, we're not going to send them back. That's kind of an astonishing move from Germany. Austria was the very first to come out and say, sorry, we're not doing that. We're not sending any military-age men back to Ukraine that sought refuge here in Austria. There are 14,000 potential draftees among the 101,000 Ukrainian refugees in that country. So 14,000. It's a pretty strong contingent of military-age men.
It doesn't take a genius to know what they're sending those men back to do. They're sending them back to die.
That's exactly right.
Right.
There's no other way to read it. The graveyards are growing at an exponential rate in Ukraine. Now, and we'll show you in just a moment what they're planning to do to women. So Ukraine is getting, of course, desperate. And the fact that they're out of men, we spoke to Colonel Douglas McGregor yesterday here on the show, who said they are out of men. That's it. Full stop. They are out of men. And so now they're getting very, very desperate and seeking out as many men as they can get around the world. Which European countries will comply? And by the way, I just should point out what Austria said. I think this is a pretty interesting statement from Austria. Austria says to send these draftees back to Ukraine would, quote, be a massive encroachment on our statehood. We would never do that. Unpack that.
Well, we saw it was the Austrian parliament last year who walked out of a Zelensky speech, right? So it is in their constitution to be neutral. So they absolutely, it would be a constitutional crisis for them to do something like that.
Interesting. Yeah. So an encroachment on our statehood. We would never do that. Interesting. On the other hand, Poland has already started sending Ukrainian men back. So Poland is actively sending Ukrainian men back to die in Ukraine, according to the Hungarian media. Of course, Poland would do this. Poland is, fully up NATO's ass. They're like a pierogi up NATO's ass right now. And they'll do whatever the United States wants, and Poland will do it. Hey, you want to build military bases here? You want us to send these military-aged Ukrainian men back to fight and die? We'll do it. That's what Poland's doing right now. And take a look at this piece of propaganda move by the United States. Keep this up on the screen. This is unbelievable. So,
did you mean to draw that like a phallus?
I had trouble drawing that. I was sketching in it, and I was using my mouse pad, I was using my trackpad, and I didn't do it very well. But I apologize. Yes. But yes,
it looks more like a letter opener anyway. So
okay, or like a butter knife with some cream cheese on it or something. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, but this is if you go to the U.S. Embassy and Consulate in Poland. Okay, this is the U.S. Embassy and Consulate in Poland website. You can go there today if you want to see this yourself. You can see that the United States government, your tax dollars, have put up a $50,000 offer for Polish media coverage. For Polish media journalists to cover Ukrainians returning to Ukraine. So
That's very specific.
So let me unpack this. So what this means is you have a funding opportunity for journalists in Poland who want to do the bidding of the United States. So if you are a Polish journalist and you want to get a $50,000 grant from the U.S. Embassy, U.S. State Department to write propaganda pieces about how Ukrainians are going back to Ukraine to fight and rebuild. Like, will you take that money from the United States to write propaganda pieces? I mean, this is literal propaganda right on the U.S. Embassy's website, asking for you to lie about what Ukrainians are going back to Ukraine to die.
Well, it falls right into the narrative that they want to create, which is like they're going back to rebuild all that Russia has destroyed.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And will you write that piece? And it is, it's very specific on their website, like how they exactly break this down and what they want you to do. $50,000, the total amount available, $50,000. And let's see, the project will support training and content production tailored to Polish journalists on a competitive basis. The project will provide small grants for Polish journalists to develop and execute reporting on the return of refugees from Poland and the rebuilding efforts. So that's right on the U.S. Embassy's website. You can read that right on the U.S. Embassy's website. Meanwhile, what's happening to the women? So in the past 48 hours, the Ukraine has now decided to close the borders for mobilized women. So they can't get their men back. You know what? We need to make sure that the women are being held as well. And they're going through all of that training right now with those wooden guns that you can see here on the screen, because they don't have the guns available for training. So they're giving them wooden guns, fake guns that they can pretend to play war. So all women in Ukraine who have medical or pharmaceutical educations will be obligated to register with the military starting next month, Zelensky says.
Now they're thinking, I picked the wrong field to go into. I should have been a vet.
I know, right?
I wonder if that's so that they know how to dole out the methamphetamines.
I find this to be a very patronizing image of like, okay, little girl, you don't get a real gun to train with. I just don't feel like they would post an image like that of a man.
No, of course not. But there are, we've covered this before. These women are training with these wooden guns because they don't have them to train with. They don't have the weapons. So.
Right, but the imagery feels like it's acceptable because it just rings to me as patronizing to a woman.
Basically, what we need these women to do is go and walk across landmines so we can find out where the landmines are. We'll just, like what we're using the Ukrainian men to do, just walk across these fields right now so they can be used as meat and be killed. Ukraine closing its borders for mobilized women, and of course those women that you see at the nightclub videos and so forth in Kiev also being told, no, don't party anymore. We need you to start enlisting as well and becoming a part of the military. And Europe closing down, at least. So we have 4 countries now. We have the Czech Republic, we have Austria, we have Germany, and what was the other one?
Hungary.
And Hungary, yeah. So those 4 countries, we applaud them for standing up and saying, absolutely not. We're not going to send these men back to die. If you live in any of these other European countries, let those countries know that you do not support sending these young men back to die.
Same if you're in the UK or if you're in the US. Tell any and all lawmakers we don't support extradition so that we can send these people to their deaths. What's interesting now is these tightening borders that, they're not allowing an exodus anymore. There was a woman in my book club who had hosted a Ukrainian family, but she said the mom goes back and forth to get more clothes when she wants to from Kiev because they lived in Kiev. Now, we know the war didn't come there, but how long will it be safe for her to do that?
Just travel back and forth
just
and go pick
casually
up clothes out of her
get
closet?
Another coat or what have you. So
she travels back if she's military age, and they keep expanding the military age, so might change. Right?
Yeah, I would just shop for new clothes here if that's our book club next week. I will ask for a update on that.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.